Have you ever shopped at an online auction? I found this one on my local online auction. And on online auctions, I tend to stay in the bid low department. And this little guy right here was not going over 30 bucks. It sat, and I ended up winning it for about $28. It's fairly structurally sound, but it has a really weird shape and it's missing some of its chips and dings all over the top as well. As always, I begin every project with a super good clean and rinse with water. This is me cleaning my piece with white lightning to make sure that I removed any of the dirt and grime, but overall, this guy was not very dirty. I also remove the original hardware. When possible, I always reuse hardware that's on the piece. I feel like it just fits the time period and sometimes suits the furniture better than ordering new. And I know I'm going to hear somebody say, "Don't paint this," but guess what? I'm painting it and I own it and it was only 30 bucks. So whatever I do is going to be better than the condition that it is in. I am going to coat this piece in 2 even coats of Slick Stick. Slick Stick is your gripping primer for anything slick or shiny. And since this surface has a shine to it, I really want to make sure that my paint will stick. Just so you know, FYI, Slick Stick has been replaced with Bonding Boss. You now have the option to use Bonding Boss as a gripping primer as well as a tannin bleed-through primer. So instead of wondering what product to use where, you have one product that you can use everywhere. So Bonding Boss is great for the 2-in-1 abilities that it will provide you. After I painted on 2 even coats of Slick Stick onto this project, I did have to wait 24 hours before I began to paint. But here's the thing, I'm not going to gatekeep and keep secrets. I didn't paint this after 24 hours. I actually didn't paint this for almost 3 weeks. This piece sat in my studio and just stared at me. I was completely creatively stuck and had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. I really couldn't figure it out. What was blocking me creatively from starting this project? Was it the fact that it was white and a weird shape just sitting in my room looking at me? Was it the Asian kind of motif that was imprinted on the front 2 cabinets? I was really stuck, so I reached out to my social media family. I asked on Instagram and I also asked on TikTok, what should I be doing with this piece? And I heard over and over and over again that I should probably fill in those 2 front panels where you could still see the little figurines on the front of the piece. But instead, my thought process was, if I paint over top of it, I might be able to cover them with a little bit of gilding wax and shading to make them pop and really work with this project. So, in the final decision, I went with blues and greens. The thought is, if I do like a smoky blue-green look, moving in from dark into light on those front panels, and then add a transfer, I'm going to be able to cover the little figurines that are carved out on the 2 front doors and still give it a really nice look that might fit in another space. So today's project is going to be 100% done in Dixie Belle Paint products. I love Dixie Belle for its easy blending. Chalk mineral paint is water-based. There's no VOCs. I can paint inside and it is actually really simple to use and blend. To start off with, I'm going to coat the entire piece with In the Navy. In the Navy is a nice deep dark blue. This will provide me with a base when I come in and do my ombre blending on the second coat. When I do an ombre blend, I like to keep a separate brush for each color. You're also going to see me spray misting bottle with water my brushes as I move along. This is going to help keep the paint movable and simple to pull together. I started out with that beautiful base of In the Navy, and then I came up into some Palmetto. Then I had some Weeping Willow and some English Ivy and a tiny bit of Mud Puddle. All of those colors together, when blended, created a really soft, faded green look. If you're new to blending, you can also use your Best Dang brush. Your Best Dang brush is really helpful in creating kind of an ombre blend. It really helps pull those colors together, and if you happen to use a circular motion, you're going to get a nice cloudy finish. The mud puddle was used on the front two doors. I really didn't put it anywhere else. I wanted those two doors to be a little bit lighter in value so that when I layer my transfer or stencil on top, that it would pop just a little bit more. And I completed the same ombre blend around the entire piece. The tops and the sides were done into the same motion, pulling in those blues and greens to create an ombre blend. This is me working on the side of the piece. I really wanted the lighter bit of the value to be directly in the center, almost like it was creating a really pretty shadow. So I created that little ombre blend around the curves so that when the light hits this piece, it just really looks pretty. After finishing my ombre blend around the entire piece, I did wait for this to get completely dry. Normally I would say wait 24 hours before you come in and add your transfers, but I put a fan full blast onto this piece to get it dry and ready for the next steps. I wanted to come in and add a little bit more layering, so that is where I'm going to apply some metallics with my Leave Me Alone stencil. I think that's funny, that name cracks me up, Leave Me Alone. I also don't want the stencil to be used in the manner where I want clean edges. I'm just going to do like a little bit of a fade. I'm going to fade the stencil in around the corners, around the curves, and I'm going to do that by using a sponge and gently blotting on Deep Woods and Pacific from the Moonshine Metallic line to create a kind of faded effect. When you use metallics in this way, it's kind of a neat look because you see them more when the light hits in certain values. It's not a true stencil where you're going around the whole thing, making sure it's perfect. You're just kind of fading it in and out of the edges. This is a transfer from Bells and Whistles. This is Elegant Avian. This is a smaller size transfer. It still has sheets inside, but it is not as big as the huge transfers that you would put across the front of your furniture. My plan is to cut up these 4 little sheets and use them on the panels that you see here on the front of the piece, only on these inset panels. So even though this transfer is a little bit smaller, it's still going to fit and take up the entire 2 squares. Transfers are really simple to use. If you've never used a transfer before, you can check out my Back to Basics series here on YouTube, and I have a video that teaches you everything that you need to know about transfers, all the ins and outs. I remove my transfers from the packaging and then cut out the desired image. After cutting out the desired image, you peel off that white backing. The white backing is what protects the sticky part of the transfer before you place it down onto your project, and then I put it down onto the piece. Using that enclosed burnishing tool to push down and rub on the top of the transfer. This releases the transfer from that sheet, that image sheet, onto your project. When you're done this part of your project, you're able to seal your transfers with any of the Dixie Belle clear coats. It's not recommended to use gator hide on top of transfers, but any of the other clear coats will do, and or wax. That means spray wax or the regular clear wax. Depending on how detailed the transfer is that you're laying down onto your project, you're going to have to make sure that all the little bits have been adhered to your piece. Remember, I'm working this transfer down onto a surface that's not 100% flat. There is a raised image behind the transfer here, so I'm just going to take my time and burnish down all of the edges. Once they're down, I did seal this entire front of the piece in clear coat in satin. You can really see how using a stencil behind your transfer adds a really nice layer of design element to your projects. Those tiny little leaves that you see kind of glimmering in the background with the metallic paint really accent all of the art that is in this transfer. This transfer is really pretty with blues, greens, and shades of purple. Perfect color combination to go with green and blue paint. I cut up and used every single part of the transfer for this project. I did kind of layer it over top of the curves at the bottom just to kind of give it a little bit more dimension, but I used all of the parts of the transfer on the 2 panels of these doors. I saved the tiniest little bits for last so that I could layer them over top of the leaves. You can see me here burnishing it down over top of the tiny little lumps and bumps that are underneath it with that raised panel design. But filling in all the blanks around the bottom really worked out well for this piece. After I finished applying my transfer to the two doors, I did seal it, like I said, in clear coat, and then I came in with my waxes. I used Dixie Belle's wax in black. This is a water-based wax to accent and darken the edges. And then I did come in with a little bit of Gilding Wax in gold to provide a little bit of shine. The hardware on this piece actually has a really pretty green cast to it. I'm not sure if that was on there to begin with or it was just kind of aged with a patina, but the color of it is perfect for the color of this buffet. So at one point there would have been a bar that went through the two holes in the hardware to kind of lock it shut. That bar was missing when I purchased this piece at auction. So I actually went to Hobby Lobby where I usually get all of my hardware and I found a tassel. That beautiful gold tassel matches very well. And it's funny because this piece sitting in my workspace for over a month, naked and white and waiting to get painted on, I have no idea why I waited so long when this might be my most favorite piece so far of 2024. She is big, bold, and curvy, and I absolutely love it. I love the hardware, the tassel, the stencils, and the transfer. This piece came together like magic. And in the end, seeing those little peaks of the stencil behind that raised panel, I just love how it all came together. I really couldn't have asked for a better piece. The Asian flair from the raised design and the transfer, they complement each other so well. And I guess, my friends, this is a lesson to always buy the thing at the auction that nobody else wants, because sometimes you can create a little bit of magic with just a little bit of paint.